بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome everybody to our Ramadan crash course. Ready or not, it's time to fast. We're going to get started with fasting, as you know, in momentarily, a few more days perhaps. Tomorrow, Sunday night maybe. The beginning of Ramadan. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about. To frame your expectations for tonight, I'm going to try and keep it as concise as possible. There are, however, some sections that are a little bit detailed so that the more seasoned worshipers will be refreshed with some of the nuances of fasting and rules of Ramadan. Otherwise, I will leave some time for Q&A in case there are things that perhaps I didn't mention that you want to know about. If I can answer those questions, I will. Otherwise, I'll have to get back to you. So the first thing that we're going to look at is when does fasting begin? As you probably know, fasting begins with the sighting of the crescent moon. And locally, we've been doing a lot of that in preparation, having these moon sighting festivals or lighting festivals in our townships. For the first time in the history, at least, of our area. So what we're looking for is the beginning of the month by way of the new moon, not astronomical calculations. That, while it may seem is a new thing based on, science and astronomy, it is not something that is unheard of in Islamic history, because there were munajjimun, which were like the scholars of celestial bodies, and they could calculate positions of stars and stuff in the past. They could calculate those things based on time and where they were projected to be, so it's not something unheard of. So the scholars of the past, they did address the astronomical calculations, and you'll find that the vast majority we're in agreement with the actual physical sighting of the moon. Though there were some kind of minority opinions that in the event that it couldn't be seen, that you could rely upon calculations. And you might find some other kind of, sidelined, studies into that. However, what we're looking for is the new moon. So the Ramadan moon will be cited by way of one mature, upright Muslim witness. That's all it takes, which is unique to Ramadan because every other month requires two witnesses. So this one mature means they've reached the age of puberty and beyond. Upright means they are of some religious standing. They're not open sinners and transgressors, because that person's witness is not taken, it's rejected. And they're Muslims, so we wouldn't take the non-Muslim's witness for the new moon. And this is regardless of gender. So it could be a man, it could be a woman, doesn't matter the social status, it could be the ruler, it could be the ruled, it doesn't really matter. Again, so this is a unique ruling that it only takes one, and that is done out of a safety measure. We only need one because Ramadan, the sensitivity of the obligatory nature of fasting allows us only one, as opposed to requiring two. Another note here is that if the moon's visibility is blocked due to atmospheric conditions, we were uncertain if we saw the moon, the crescent, not if, I'm not sure if I saw it or not. I could have seen it because the line of sight to the horizon where you would normally see the moon, and I'm pointing this direction because that's where it is in the night sky for us. It's that direction. Okay, so if you've never tried to sight the moon, you can attempt to sight the moon by going out around Maghrib time. As the sun begins to set below the horizon, okay, you only get about 5 or 10 minutes to do this. The sun starts to set below the horizon, and as the sun goes below the horizon, it leaves a little bit of light left, and it's dark enough that you can see the moon, which will be following the sun below the horizon if it's visible. It will be following the sun below the horizon, and you'll see this veriest, slightest little sliver of a crescent, and that would indicate the beginning of the month. And so it's something that you could do. Now, if you're interested in doing that, you have to find a location where the horizon's not impeded by like buildings, okay, which would be our problem, or trees, or a mountain, or atmospheric conditions like pollution, okay, if it's like smoggy out, or if there's clouds, or it's hazy, or it's rainy, you're certainly not going to be able to see it. So it has to be clear. You have to have a clear line of sight, and the visibility, which sometimes you can find on like those weather apps, what's the visibility in your area? The visibility has to be pretty good. And so often the places that sight the moon, and they do it, sometimes we say like early, it's because the visibility is tremendous. They have excellent atmospheric conditions, the line of sight is perfect, and they're able to see that crescent moon. And the crescent moon is seen with the eye, and some say it's permissible to use optical aid, which means you could use a telescope. Some say you can use a telescope to first find it and then look, and if you see it with the naked eye, then you take that as well. But we will take any type of sighting, whether it's with an optical aided telescope or not. Another interesting thing that you could use if you're into technology and you're into iPads and tablets and things is you can go on your app store and you can find a map of the night sky. Okay? So you download the app on your tablet or your, I don't know if it works on the phone, I think it might work on your phone. And what it does is it maps the constellations and all the celestial bodies, including the sun and the moon. And you can move, as you move your device around in the like directional, it will show you what should be appearing in front of you. So if you turn this way, it'll show you the constellations over here based on your location and based on the time and the date. And so what you could do to help yourself find where the moon would be, is you would use that device and you can pull it up in that way. If we have time, I'll show that to you at the end because I have it on my iPad here and we can display it on the screen. So that could give you a better idea where the moon is located, and you can see, can I see it? It's supposed to be right here. Am I able to see it or not see it? All right, it's a good thing to take the family out to do if possible. Otherwise, you just got to wait for somebody to make the announcement. If you're watching online, you would go to websites like chicagohilal.com or .org. And there are other numerous moon sighting websites that keep track of sightings around the nation and around the globe. If you're interested here, you can just follow our GCLEA WhatsApp group, or if you're signed up for the email, then you'll get an announcement as soon as we know there's been a positive sighting. And when it comes to the moon sighting, there's two major schools of thought. One is local sighting, which they only look at their region, and then there's international sighting or global sighting. The global sighting seems to be the easiest thing to manage and kind of a prevalent and popular opinion, and that's what we follow here. So any moon sighting, a positive moon sighting, a viable moon sighting, we will take. The other thing to note about the moon sighting is that the moon can be sighted anywhere. It's not just sighted in Saudi Arabia. That's important to note because often we're waiting for news from Saudi Arabia. Well, did Saudi sight the moon or not? So, and the moon can be sighted first in our hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere, about 45% of the time first here than it would be sighted over there, which means we could have Ramadan 1 before the Muslim world has Ramadan 1. So if by whatever the day is, Saudi doesn't announce and they say, oh, Ramadan's not happening, that means for them. And Saudi is a local moon sighting country. They tell you that very explicitly. We sight for our country and that's it. Though the neighboring countries will follow after Saudi Arabia. They'll tell you, we sight locally. The scholars say we sight locally. That's what they do. They don't take sightings from other parts of the world, they sight locally. So if they announce no Ramadan, it doesn't mean no Ramadan for us. It means we have to wait because remember, the sun sets there before it sets here, right? Based on the way the people that believe that the globe is round, for those of you that are still believing in that reality, it's going to, the way that that thing works, that big giant ball spins in the, you know, in the sun and the moon, etc. So the sun is going to set, of course, over there first, and then we have to wait for it to set over here. And so when it sets here, we might not see it in New Jersey, but guess what we have to wait for? Our homies over in the West Coast in California, which means that Maghrib time comes, there's no positive sighting yet, so we have to wait a little bit longer in anticipation for the month of Ramadan, and eventually California will declare a positive or a negative, and we'll know, which potentially means we'll end up waiting a little longer than we normally like to, but that's a part of the Ramadan experience. So you have to be prepared for that possible wait time, okay? Be ready for that. And why I'm saying that is so you don't start emailing or texting me, hey, what's going on? What are we doing? Why is this not happening? And I'm going, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say. All right, so please remember that. All right, so that's what you need to know about the moon sighting. Once the moon is sighted, Ramadan's an obligation. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. Allah says, whoever witnesses the month, here's the shahada, which is the witness of the moon, they are to fast. This is an obligation. فَلْيَصُمْ. There's a lam here, lam al-amr. That means an obligation. You have to fast the month. And in order to be obliged to fast, you have to meet these 4 basic prerequisites, conditions. You have to be mature, meaning have reached puberty, okay? And the maximum age of that is 15, okay? So if there are no signs of puberty present, then if you reach 15 years of age, according to the Hijra calendar, which means in the Gregorian calendar you might be like 14, then you're obliged to fast. The next thing is obviously you have to be Muslim. Number 3 is you have to be of sound mind. Okay, so if you're not of sound mind, you have some type of mental deficit which prevents you from understanding basic things, and I'm sure we all understand what that means. You don't have to fast in that case. So you have to be of sound mind, and then you have to have the physical ability to do so. That's what constitutes an obligation for a Muslim to fast. Then you have what's required for a valid fast. Okay, so the first thing was, what are the conditions for an obligation, which is shurut al-wujub, and then you have shurut al-sihha, which is basically like the validity of the fast. So number 1 is, again, you have to be Muslim. You have to be of sound mind. Recapping that. You have to have reached the age of discernment. So this means the age of 7 or above. So while you're not obliged to fast at the age of 7, your fast will be valid. So a 7-year-old could fast during Ramadan. Are they obliged? Or 7, or 8, or a 9, or a 10, or 11-year-old could fast during Ramadan. And parents should be encouraging their kids, much like they encourage them to pray at that age, they should be encouraging their kids to fast. Yes, at that age. You've got to get them going, get the habit formed, get them poised and ready, so that when it's time for an obligation, then they're not out of sync with the Muslim community. So their fast will be valid at the age of discernment. The next thing is not experiencing a menstrual cycle. This is for the ladies. If they're experiencing their menstrual cycle, then the fast, not only is it not obligatory, it's not valid to fast during that cycle. Or postpartum bleeding. So that, of course, is after they've delivered a child. So there's a period of time in which they are allotted that they don't fast. The next thing is to have the intention to fast, the niyyah. This is something well known in Islam, that the niyyah is of paramount importance. The Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Everything is according to their intention. So an intention has to be made. And the intention for fasting Ramadan has to be made every night before the fast begins. Every night, because every day is an individual act of fasting, such that if one day was invalidated or spoiled, it would not impact the previous day or the day after. If there was just one thing in a lump sum with one intention working for the whole thing, it could potentially mean one invalidation in Ramadan can impact the other days, right? So it's not like a dominoes where one mistake sends them all toppling over. For that reason, each day is treated as an individual day, and the intention is required before the day of fasting begins. So this is a very important part of Ramadan, is setting the right intention. And then you have to refrain from all the things which invalidate the fast from Salat al-Maghrib. We're talking about Salat al-Fajr, we're talking about the adhan. Not when the adhan is called, by the way, when the adhan should be called, the first moment of Fajr. There might be a delay. Sometimes places they delay the adhan of Fajr for whatever reason. But when the Fajr time enters, that's when the fast begins. So it's not when Fajr prayer is made, it's not after Fajr prayer is completed, it's not when the sun rises above the horizon, it's when Fajr time begins, is when the fast commences each day. And then it ends at Salat al-Maghrib. So that means when the adhan of Maghrib is called, the fast is concluded. So those are some of the requirements for a valid fast. So we're talking about who has to fast. Now we talk about who is permitted to break their fast. Who's allowed to break their fast? So first and foremost is pregnant and breastfeeding women. And there are some details here. So if they fear for themselves, they wouldn't fast because there was some medical concern. That if I fast, it will create some type of hardship or unnecessary burden. And so if the burden or the hardship is feared for the woman herself and for the child, so either themselves or themselves and the child, they're only required to make up the fast that they missed. So basically, they're breaking the fast because of a fear they have for themselves or themselves and their child. The next case is that a pregnant or breastfeeding woman is worried for her child only. She's not worried about her own health. She's worried for her child. So a breastfeeding mother might say, or a breastfeeding woman, she might say, look, if I fast, it will diminish my milk supply and I won't be able to continue to breastfeed throughout Ramadan. And I would deny my child the breast milk. So I'm going to break my fast for the sake of my child. Not because I'm worried for my own health. It's not of any detriment to me. So in this case, why is she breaking her fast? For the child. Okay. In this case, she breaks her fast for the sake of the child. Obviously, she has to make up the day that was missed, all the days they missed, and now the guardian of the child has to feed. For every day that the fast was broken, the amount equivalent to an expiation of one poor person, which we'll talk about shortly in greater detail. So there's, in this case, again, fearing for the child and the child alone. They're going to make up the day. The mother and the guardian of the child, which would typically be the father, is going to feed one poor person. It's going to be a fidya that's involved in this situation. So that's category number one. They're permitted to break the fast in Ramadan. The next category is the elderly or chronically ill. Chronically ill means someone who's sick and it's not expected that they were going to find a cure or going to get better. It's just a chronic disease that they're going to have for the rest of their days. So here, the elderly or chronically ill, whoever is incapable, in this case of fasting, whether that's again old age or chronic illness, is to feed one poor person for every day. Much like the previous category, the woman that broke her fast for the sake of her child. And they will feed one poor person the amount equivalent to the kafara, which is 1 mud of wheat, or a half sa'a of another type of staple food. So what is a mud? That's a measurement of volume. Does anyone know what a mud is? Anyone? This amount is 1 mud. It's like two handed scoop, roughly. So whatever you would fit in there, a nice generous scoop of rice, or this is for wheat, and then everything else is a half sa'a, which is 2 times that amount. So that would mean rice or oats or dates or other staple foods that you would, dry foods, storable foods that you would use in your region. So that would be what the chronically ill or elderly would feed for every day that they missed because they broke their fast. And this ruling or this understanding is based on a verse in the Quran, verse number 184 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. Here he begins in the verse and he says, meaning he's talking about fasting a number of days, and whoever from you is sick or on a journey, then they are to make up the days that they missed. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. And for those that are able, but with great difficulty, they are to feed a poor person the fidya. So you can find this in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 184. And the understanding of this verse is narrated by Ibn Abbas, the great companion of the Prophet ﷺ. So basically, here there's a ransom or a substitute for fasting that is to be given for the days that are missed due to being either elderly and unable to fast, or chronically ill and unable to fast. So this is a reality that every community has to deal with. So the next thing is a person that is ill. Okay, so it's recommended for the ill, someone that's sick, who would find it great, who might face difficulty or face harm from fasting, that they break their fast. And this also applies to the traveler who is permitted to shorten their prayers. Okay, and that is about a distance in which you travel. Okay, so if you meet that minimum distance, you're permitted to break your fast. Okay, so here the sick and the traveler, and that's also mentioned in that very verse that I recited, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. This is the previous verse. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. So here, this is verse number 185. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically says that whoever witnesses the month of Ramadan, then they're to fast, and whoever is sick or whoever is traveling, then they would make up the days that they missed later. And this, of course, is a way in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the religion easy and facilitates things for us. He says, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. That Allah wants ease for you and doesn't want hardship for you. So this is another important ruling that you should take note of. So whoever is sick or traveling, you can break your fast, and you're required to make up the missed days later. And you can make them up anytime throughout the year, so long as it's done before the next Ramadan. You cannot delay your fast that you have to make up beyond the next Ramadan. Like you start stacking them up. And what happens is when you delay them, not only do you have to make them up if they've run into Ramadan, but you have to pay a fidya for delaying them beyond that year. Okay, so now you're making it harder for yourself. So you need to make them up. It's preferred to make them up as soon as possible, and you are permitted to delay making them up until the next Ramadan comes, and then they can become obligatory. So let's say you had 5 days you missed in the last Ramadan, so it's recommended that you make them up. But once you're 5 days out from the next Ramadan, those make-up days become obligatory for you to make them up. Becomes an obligation. So if you have yet to make up those days, Hopefully you've only got one or two that need to be made up, because that's about all the time that you have, tomorrow and Sunday. A note about traveling here is that if you travel with the intention of breaking your fast, what do you think happens? Anyone? You say, you know what, we've been fasting 15 days. Let's take a little trip so we can take a break. We can get lunch. I need my coffee. I need my smoothie. I want this or that. I'm feeling something. So let's take a break, 15 days out. It's a halfway point, halftime show. Let's take a trip down to something or other. Let's go into the city, go to a halal spot. Imagine that. What do you think? I said it's permissible to break your fast if you're traveling. Can you do that? Nope. Sorry. You can't do that. So in that case, it's impermissible to break your fast, and that journey is haram. A journey with that intention is haram, which also means you cannot shorten and combine your prayers on such a journey. Because journeys that permit you to shorten and combine your prayers have to be halal, permissible trips. Like you couldn't go with the intention to gamble in Vegas. Forget Vegas, Atlantic City. Right? How far? That might not even make our minimum requirement of distance. But let's say you want to go gambling, that's my intention, and you're driving and you're like, hey, it's prayer time. Imagine that scenario. Let's join and combine Salat al-Dhuhr Nasr, and then we'll go into the casinos. No, you can't even do that, because the nature of the travel is impermissible. And so in order to travel in order to break your fast is also something that is impermissible, cannot be done, and therefore the travel itself is also illegitimate. It is impermissible. However, if you were traveling for work, if you were traveling for any other permissible reason, then this concession would be allowable. This concession would be allowable. Another scenario you might run into is a resident. You're still a resident, and you intend to fast the day, and then later you decide to travel during the day. You started your day fasting, and then you said, you know what, I got to get out of town real quick. There's something I got to take care of. I've got to go pick somebody up, or I've got to run an errand. It's going to take me out of town. It's going to take me the distance of traveling. So what do? You were fasting. What are you going to do now? This is where I want to hear from you. What do you think? What should you do? Okay? You can keep the fast. You can continue to fast even though you're traveling. Okay? Any other options? Okay, you could still do your fast. Very good. I like that response. If you're traveling for work, you could still hold your fast. That's true. And that's the better option. Is you started your day fasting. Even if you travel, it's preferred that you continue the fast in order to not invalidate your good deeds. That's a general concept in Islam. Do not invalidate your deeds. However, you could break your fast. It's permissible for you to do that. The next question I have for you is, let's say at night you go, tomorrow I'm going to travel. My intention is to travel. In fact, I'm going to travel by plane, and I'm going to travel hundreds of miles at 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. I'm going to wake up, going to get ready at our leisure. We're going to head to the airport. At 1 o'clock, we're going to get on the plane, and we're going to start traveling to wherever we go. That is a scenario that we need to deal with. What do we do during that scenario? Does anyone know? Okay? He said you could break your fast because you'd be on a plane be more than one day.
You cannot break it because you still have to fast until you leave and go enough distance.
Okay? Okay, this one says you still have to fast until you leave and you go enough distance to break your fast. Does anyone else want to add to that? Yes, sir. Fast until you see the darkness. Okay, so that means you're on the plane and you're just flying and you're going to wait. Maybe you're going this way. It's earlier for you. Barakallahu feek. Or it's going that way. Zadakallah hirsan. You know, you're going the opposite way. It's going to take longer. Anyone else? You could do that, sure.
I don't know, my wife is traveling during Ramadan. She's gonna come here. She better fast.
She better fast. She's traveling. She's traveling. She better fast. Airplane's easy peasy, pumpkin breezy. Anybody else? Yes? Oh, you want the hayal? Okay, good. Everybody wants hayal. I don't know. So popular. All right, so the case here is maybe a couple scenarios. Number one is the intention to travel is not travel. The concession to break your fast is for travel, not the intention to travel. You have to understand the difference. At night I said I'm going to travel. The reality is I may change my mind. At 12 p.m., my flight's at 1. I go, you know what, never mind. I'm not going. Maybe the travel was for my job. And at 12 p.m. my boss calls and says, you're fired. Now I can't travel. Or the airplane carrier calls and says, flight's been canceled. Planes are grounded. So then what happened? I didn't travel. So in this scenario, you can't wake up in the morning going, I'm traveling today, so I'm not fasting. Because when you wake up, you're still at home. And the concession, the travel, which is the concession, has not become applicable. And so in this case, you have to wake up. You have to have made the intention to fast. And then, when you begin your journey, you have to leave your area of residence. You have to go out of the township, or you have to go out of the city. You have to go out of the inhabited region in which you live. And once you get outside of that, so long as the journey will reach the minimum threshold of distance, then you can break your fast even before you get to that point. So long as you're outside of your city limits or your town. Okay? So a practical scenario would be, I'm here in Cherry Hill. I'm going to travel by plane to North Carolina. I leave at 12 to get to the, I don't know. You might have 1 o'clock flight. I got to leave probably at, I got to leave here probably 11:30 if I'm being wild. You know, I like a little excitement, so I'm going to cut it short to see if I can make it or not, you know? Do you do that? Or are you like a 3-hour person? 3 hours, you get there early, you're just waiting around. I'm more of like a, let's see if we can do this, you know? Get there right at the buzzer. All right, we get there. I'm in the airport. And then I'm going to get on the plane. I'm going to take off, and then I can break my fast. Because now I'm leaving my residential area. Now I'm outside of the area, right? The general area. That's when I can break my fast in this case. I could get to the airport. Still, they could turn me back around, and I got to come back home. And because Philadelphia Airport is right here, there's no like real break in the residential area. I mean, from Cherry Hill all the way, it's like home, residential area. It's almost kind of like one giant place that we live in. Then I have to be able to get out of that. So in that case, I would wait until my airplane kind of started to take off, and then I would be permitted to break my fast due to travel. So those are a couple of important things. If you have a scenario in your mind, please keep it in there, and we'll get to it, inshallah, in the Q&A section. So after that, permitted to break the fast, the next thing is what will break your fast? What will invalidate your fast? So there are a number of things. If we could have, somebody close the back door there. Yeah, we just close so the kids can play without being disturbed by us. All right. So there's a couple of things. Anything that reaches what they call al-jawf, which is like, it's not just inside the body, but it's not like, it's something that's more like the internal part of the body, or something that reaches the throat, or something that reaches the brain. And we'll talk about that, some examples of that. Whether that thing is a liquid or a solid, like a foreign body. Okay? We'll talk about some examples, modern day examples of what that looks like. Whether it's nourishing or not. So like it could be something that you might put inside of your body that is typical, or something that is atypical that is put inside the body. And if it reaches the jawf, the throat, or the brain, it will invalidate the fast. And each of these things have to be done intentionally. Like you have chosen to do this. Now, if you did it forgetfully, that's another scenario. If you did it under coercion, you were forced to do it, that's another scenario. So this is what is done intentionally, by choice, knowing that you're doing it and what the ruling of it is. All right, if you did something forgetfully, like so you drank water, all of a sudden you bent down and you took a sip of water and you go, oh, I'm fasting. And you know what? You might do that more than one time in the day. We had one gentleman here, his name will go unmentioned, who did that 3 times in one day in Ramadan. Had something to drink, had something to eat, and then had something to drink. Each time, forgetting that they were fasting Ramadan, they said, oh, Allahu Akbar. And then they're like, okay. And then later in the day, had a snack, whoa, I'm fasting. And then had a drink later on 3 times. Fast is still valid. Yeah. Yeah, we learned about that last year, and I will never forget that. So you have to, this something has to be done knowingly and intentionally. So that's number 1. Number 2 is menstrual cycle or postpartum bleeding. So if that were to begin in the day of Ramadan, in the daylight, that means the fast is over. Even if it was like moments before Salat al-Maghrib, then the fast is broken and it has to be made up. The next thing is the determination to break the fast, and that is an intention. Because the fast is based on an intention, all it takes is an intention to invalidate the fast. It's like someone going, if I had food, I'd break my fast. I'd eat it right now. They might not have anything. They go, if I had it, I'd eat it. That intention alone invalidates the fast. Just because you didn't do it doesn't mean the fast is still valid. Just by saying, I'm going to eat. If I had food, I'd eat right now. If I had something to drink, I would drink it right now. The real determination to break the fast will invalidate the fast. The next thing is doubting the fast. Person goes, am I fasting or not? I'm not sure. Am I going to fast today or I'm not going to fast today? It's like 10 a.m. and you just woke up. You go, am I going to fast? Am I not going to fast? I don't know what to do. So that's a doubt. And that the niyyah is it has to be a resolute intention. Okay, it has to be a resolute intention. It can't be a doubtful concept. The next thing is voluntary vomiting. That means you induced vomiting. So if you vomited involuntarily, like a reaction to something, you were sick or ill and you vomited, your fast would still be valid. But if you induced vomiting, like the night before, let's say for sahur, you overdid it. It's here, right? It's still sitting here. So you're like, man, I can't carry on. I need to press the eject button. If you press the eject button and something comes out, voluntarily, your fast is invalidated for the day. You have to make it up. You do have to continue not eating. And that's another important thing to note, that some of these things, if you break your fast, you still have to finish fasting. It's not permissible to eat and drink in the daylight of Ramadan. So in this case, you would have to continue refraining. Another thing is swallowing phlegm in the mouth. It's not saliva. And as off-putting as this might sound to many people, this is like phlegm, whether it's from your chest or it's from your sinuses. Thank you. From your sinuses, if it is brought into your mouth, it has to be, you have to spit it out. You cannot swallow that because that is now something that was inside that has now come out. Because your mouth, the inside of your mouth is considered al-kharij, min al-kharij. This is outside of the body. Okay? It's outside of the body. So now it's outside of the body, and that's why you still make wudu and stuff. You can still wash your mouth because it's outside of the body. And then you've swallowed it, it's reached the throat. Remember we said anything that reaches the throat breaks the fast. So phlegm has to be removed. The next thing is hijama. Hijama, which is bloodletting, or cupping, as it's often referred to. So not only the person that has the blood removed from the body, through hijama, not through incision, surgery, not through blood donation. These are different things. Hijama is cupping. It's a prophetic form of medicinal treatment. Okay, so, and not only the person that has the blood removed, but the one that performs the hijama, their fast will be broken. This was mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so this is specific to cupping, not bloodletting and blood donation. We'll talk about that again briefly. The next thing is orgasmic fluid. If you don't know what that is, you got to talk to your parents. Okay, orgasmic fluid due to repeated glances, meaning what you were looking at, not one time, but what you were looking at multiple times that you probably shouldn't have been looking at, right, was so stimulated and arousing that it resulted in orgasmic fluid. Okay, so that would break the fast. Pre-orgasmic fluid and orgasmic fluid due to kissing, touching, etc. That would also break the fast. Again, I think as adults we all understand what that means. And this is applicable to both men as well as women. And then of course, intimacy or intercourse. Regardless of the outcome or the result of that, just the act of it alone will invalidate the fast. So these are a handful of things, or I should say 2 handfuls of things that will invalidate the fast. There are other things based on the principles of these things and the general understanding of what fasting is that we can apply to some modern day scenarios, like injections with the needle, that you're going to insert something into your body by way of an injection. So there are 2 types of these. Number 1 is an injection that is given into the arm, like your skin, your muscle, whether it's your hand here. You know, sometimes you might get a shot in the hand. Sometimes they'll go here or here, wherever. If it's in just the flesh of the body, the flesh only, maybe it's in the leg, like your thigh, then this would not break the fast. If an injection was given in your stomach or in your chest or in your back, such that whatever was injected into the body reaches al-jawf, like the interior part of the body, not just the topical fleshy part, but inside, like your stomach or something that leads to the stomach, then the fast will be broken for this type of injection. Another thing is ear, eye, and nose drops. Ear, eyes, and nose drops. If the liquid that's being dropped into the ear, the eye, or the nose reaches either the brain or the throat, the fast is invalidated. Right? So the eardrops can reach the throat. You know, the ears, eyes, and nose, what is it? What do they call the doctor? Ears, nose, and throat. Right? Ears, nose, and throat, because those are all kind of connected. Ears, nose, and throat, those are connected. And the eye drops are similar to that. So the eye drop, if you talk to your eye doctor, will tell you that sometimes inserting some type of, or injecting or putting some type of liquid into the eye can reach into the brain. Some forms of these things reach in there. So they do actually administer some types of medicines that are meant to go there through the eye. So you have to be weary of these types of things. So if you have to have ear, eyes or nose drops, it's preferred that you take them after Maghrib time during the night so that you don't risk, breaking your fast. So in the event that you did administer some of these drops and you tasted that medicine or something in your throat, that means your fast is invalidated. And the quickest way to do that is the nose, right? Nose drops or nose sprays is almost every time you're going to get a taste in the back of your throat, which is of that medicine. That means the fast is invalidated because we said, remember, anything, liquid or solid, nourishing or not, that reaches the throat, it will invalidate the fast. So that has to do with those drops. The next thing is a scope. They stick a scope down your throat to, maybe it's like a camera or something else they want to investigate. So a scope, this is not nourishing. This is a solid, a non-nourishing solid. It's an object being stuck into your throat, into the cavity of your body. And even if it doesn't have any jelly on it, any type of lubricant that they would use to facilitate the insertion of that scope, meaning that it wouldn't leave behind anything. The mere fact that it entered into the jof, the throat, and beyond would invalidate the fast. That is through the throat. That also applies to scopes that may be inserted into the stomach, right, through the body. Instead of through the throat, they might make an incision and insert a scope in some form or fashion. That would also invalidate the fast because that's considered min al-jawf, right, from the cavity of the body. Another thing that is common is incense or bukhur. Incense and bukhur. This is not perfume, like the spray perfume, or I should say, let's not say spray, let's say the rub-on perfume. The incense and bukhur, if you light that stuff and then you intentionally breathe it in, intentionally you're breathing it in, not you just happen to because it's been lit and it's there and you just smell it, but you're intentionally inhaling it, then you've inhaled something that's going and it reaches your throat, then your fast is invalidated because the bukhur and the incense, there's a substance in that smoke, okay, that's going to get inside of your body. As opposed to like a topical perfume or fragrance that you put on, what you're getting is the aroma of that as opposed to the matter of it, right? The smoke or whatever things that are inside of that are being burned off. So you have to be careful for that. Another common thing, and a question that's often asked, is toothpaste. Is it permissible to use toothpaste during the daylight hours of Ramadan? So using toothpaste is impermissible in the daylight hours of Ramadan. And it will break your fast if that reaches your throat. So I'm not sure how that's even possible. How for it not to get back there. Because even if you brush your teeth with that toothpaste and then you rinse all of it out and all of the most of it, the matter of it's gone, when you swallow, what do you get? Minty coolness. Right in your throat. All of the flavor agents, those tiny little flavor agents are now being swallowed, as minute as it may be. So in that case, yes, it would have invalidated the fast. So toothpaste should be used prior to the adhan of Fajr. Another thing, suppositories, they will also break the fast. Because you're now putting something in your body that can potentially reach al-jawf, which would be the cavity, the inside of your body, like it would reach your stomach. Another thing is gargling, whether that's like mouthwash, this is similar to toothpaste, or some type of medicine which you're supposed to gargle. This is disliked to do that. And if something reaches your throat, the fast is broken. Another common thing is inhalers. You know those little inhaler pieces. They have some type of substance. There's some matter in those things that when you puff that, it's not just oxygen, but there's some chemical, there's some medicine that is now inhaled. So it reaches the throat, which means that it breaks the fast. So inhalers should be avoided. Another thing, of course, is smoking, more so than the inhaler. You're intentionally inhaling, going into your throat, this chemical substance. That would break the fast. Some things which don't break the fast would be like patches. So like the icy hot that you put on your body, or a nicotine patch, right? There's some people that may be addicted to nicotine, and they have an impossible challenge in Ramadan to get off the cigarettes. And so one way that they can cope with that is with the nicotine patch. That won't break the fast. Like icy hot wouldn't break the fast. Donating blood, I mentioned this before, doesn't break the fast because it's not hijama. Brushing the teeth without toothpaste, right? Just a regular toothbrush or a siwak. You can use that during the, whether it's recommended or not, that's another story altogether. However, it doesn't break the fast if you use that. Lotions, creams, perfumes that you put on your skin, the outside of your body, cutting an onion and putting it on your foot, putting a sock on that because you're sick and that's what your mom told you to do to make you feel better. One of those old remedies that will not break your fast, even if you taste that. Some people have reported that they did that and there's a taste to it. But even if you taste it, it doesn't break the fast because it's on the outside of the body. Or if a person is on an oxygen tube, right? Somebody needs oxygen constantly, this does not break the fast because this is the oxygen that is that we already breathe. So if you do break your fast, well, what do you have to do? If you break your fast, whether you break your fast, let's say, obviously the excuses that we mentioned, you have to make up the day. The same thing goes for if you break the fast. It's my son calling, as you can see. If you break the fast intentionally, I knew this was going to happen. All right. If you break your fast intentionally, this is a sin. Ala barakatillah. If you break your fast intentionally, this is a sin. So you have to make up the fast, and then you have to make what? Tawbah. You have to repent because you've just broken fast. It's an obligation. If you broke your fast due to intercourse, you're married, maybe a newlywed, I don't know. You got married before Ramadan, big mistake. Should have delayed. And you just were overwhelmed. Anyway, that happened. This is the worst case scenario because the expiation is far greater than just making up the fast and then making tawbah. Now, on top of that, you have to free a Muslim bondservant, fast 2 consecutive months, or feed 60 poor people. And the expiation for this goes in that order. You can't just jump right down to the fast of feeding 60 poor people. You can't say, oh, I don't want to do 1 or 2, I'm going to go to number 3. You have to look for number 1, okay, not available. You have to look at number 2. Could you have fasted Ramadan? Yes. What does that mean? Now you have to fast 2 months. You can't say, well, I don't want to fast. I don't like that. So I'm going to do 60 poor people. I can do that easily. That's like, maybe I spend 120 bucks. If I send it overseas, I might spend 30 bucks. No, that's a last case scenario in which you don't have option number 1 or number 2. And then in the event that you couldn't afford to feed 60 poor people, then the obligation for this expiation is foregone altogether. Right? But obviously, that's the worst case scenario. It's like the red line. You don't want to cross. So that is what would break the fast and what must be done if the fast is broken. The next thing I wanted to discuss was what's disliked. So this is disliked, meaning it's not impermissible and it's not going to break your fast, but it should be avoided. The first thing is swallowing saliva. This might seem gross. Swallowing saliva that you've pooled in your mouth, like you just collected saliva for some reason. Saliva is produced constantly in your mouth, as you know. You're constantly producing saliva and you're constantly swallowing that. This is not phlegm. This is what's produced right in your mouth. And because it's in your mouth, it's min al-kharij. We talked about that. It's outside of the body. And the exception to saliva is because it's so continuous and so difficult to manage, it's a concession for you to swallow it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. Like phlegm. Phlegm happens a couple times a day, maybe at that. So in that case, then you just spit it out because it's easy to manage. But saliva, because it is such a constant thing that's produced in the mouth, you can swallow it. It's no problem. Even if it's going into your throat, I mean, you understand. But pooling it in the mouth, collecting it, that's disliked. Right? Because it's almost like, I'm just going to drink this. I don't know what somebody might think. So that should be avoided. Number 2 is tasting food. This should be avoided. Even if for good reason. The good reason might be, I'm cooking for my family, or I'm cooking for my guests, and I want to make sure the spice is right. I want to make sure the taste is... You should not be worried about this. Don't worry about this thing. This is disliked. I mean, if you have to, okay. But if that gets into your throat, you've invalidated your fast. If you're tasting it and then some of it gets into your throat, it's over. So that's why it's not worth it. It's disliked because of that. It's disliked in order to prevent, to stay away from something which is impermissible. Another thing is chewing flavorless gum, which doesn't exist on the market today, in our marketplace. Flavorless gum, you're not going to find that anywhere. Grocery store, CVS, I don't even know if you can order it on Amazon. You would find this if you lived abroad. There's like a traditional gum that's like, it's the OG organic gum. It's like raw. It's like a real chewy substance that you can chew on. It's almost like wax in a way. It's no flavor to it. It's not as enjoyable if you're used to chewing the typical gums that are on the market, but it's there. So even chewing flavorless gum in which there's no flavor agents that would dissolve, no sugars that would dissolve and you would swallow it, that is disliked as well. And then lastly, in this list here is kissing and flirting in a manner which would stir desires. Right? You and your significant other throughout the month of Ramadan, kind of, being sweet and cute with each other. This should be avoided so that you don't end up breaking your fast due to some of the other things that I mentioned previously. So these are some of the things that are disliked. Some things that should be avoided absolutely, categorically, during Ramadan are things like lying, backbiting, slander, cursing, these types of things. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, whoever does not abandon false speech and misconduct, Allah will not be pleased that they abandon their food and drink. So if you're backbiting, if you're guilty of cursing or slandering or lying in Ramadan, it doesn't mean that you've broken your fast. It does mean, however, you're detracting from the fadl, the virtue of what you're doing. You're going to detract from the reward of what it is that you're doing. And so these types of things must absolutely be avoided. Another thing is what's recommended. All right, so now we're moving into like a positive scenario. We talked a lot about what you shouldn't do, what you can't do, what you should stay away from. Now it's what should you be doing in Ramadan. Number 1, reading the Quran. I think that should be obvious. We talked about that today in Salat al-Jum'ah. Number 2 is dhikr. This should be something that's constant in Ramadan, if it's not already constant in your life. Giving sadaqah or charity. This is a very, very important thing in Ramadan. It's a tradition of the Prophet ﷺ to be charitable, especially in Ramadan. There's a great reward of giving sadaqah in Ramadan. That's why they're always having fundraisers in Ramadan. It's not just a coincidence. The second thing is delaying suhoor. Delaying it not to the point that you're eating and then the adhan goes. Right? They used to have a little period of time, like بِقَدْرِ 50 ayah or so. It was like 50 verses or so between the time that they ended their suhoor until the time that the adhan would be called. Right? So there's a little buffer zone. You don't want to be drinking and the adhan's going, and because now you're intentionally consuming something at the time of siyam. So, yeah, just give yourself a buffer. I would say like 5 to 10 minute buffer. Play it safe. And then hastening to make iftar. So, meaning you're going to make iftar when the adhan goes. Once the adhan is called, then you make your iftar. You break your fast. You don't wait thinking I'll get more reward if I wait after Maghrib. I'm going to wait until Salat al-Isha. I'll wait till after Taraweeh and then I'll break my fast. You're not getting any more reward. This is not siyam in Islam. This is not the fasting of Islam. Fasting of Islam goes until Salat al-Maghrib, so it's recommended to make haste in breaking the fast. And the last thing that we are going to look at here are some of the major objectives, just as a recap. I've talked about this as well to some extent in the previous Jummah. The attainment of taqwa, of course, piety, if we were to translate it roughly. And then to develop yourself, to refine your character, work on your manners, work on your patience, work on your tongue, how you talk to people, how you handle others, how you interact with each other. This should be something in the front of your mind when it comes to fasting in Ramadan. These are some of the main objectives beyond just not eating or drinking. And so that'll wrap it up for me. Jazakallah khair. It's 9 o'clock. It's more than I expected to go over. But I do hope that this was thorough enough to give you a refresher and or introduce some new concepts into your Ramadan this year. Are there any questions before we wrap it up? Sorry, what was that? Okay, all right, good. What about holding grudges? Should you hold a grudge in Ramadan? Sure. So holding grudges and being unforgiving. So a part of the character of a Muslim, the akhlaq of the Muslim is to be forgiving. In hopes that Allah would forgive you. Man la yarham la yurham. The Prophet said, whoever doesn't show mercy is not shown mercy. So the character of the Muslim is one that's forgiving as kind of a baseline. Not one that holds grudges and then you have to earn your forgiveness. The Muslim is one that not only forgives, but forgets. So sometimes we'll forgive somebody, but we'll keep that one locked in the chamber, ready to fire at another point in time. Okay, I forgive you, but I'm loading that in my pistola right here. And the next time you get me angry, I'm going to whip that out and I'm going to shoot you with that infraction that you committed. Remember when you did this, this, and this? Boom, boom, boom. That's not forgetting. It's not actually absolving that person of anything. So the character of the Muslim is one to be forgiving, not to hold grudges, certainly. Yeah, and I think Ramadan is a great time to do that.
Regarding the traveling, so if I start by Ramadan here, and then if I travel to another country, like it happened to me, like I went to Bangladesh, I usually they do the local signing here,
Yes.
and they do the Eid one day after.
Okay.
So that made it 31 Ramadan, 31 days.
Yes.
So should we do the last day of Ramadan over them, even though I know it's Eid celebrated here, or I should go ahead and just follow the Eid?
So the question is, if you start your fast in one location and then you go to another location, when do you break your fast? Do I break my fast with my original location or with my current location? So what you're going to do is you're going to follow your current location. So if you end up back in Bangladesh, the motherland, it's partially my motherland. I told you I'm like an adopted Bengali. Did I tell you that? Yeah, I'm like adopted Bengali. Yeah. I learned about the lungi and everything. Okay? So if you're visiting the motherland in Ramadan and you get one more day, then that's the Bengali gift. You got an extra day to fast. Yeah, you're going to stay there with them.
That's what I did. That's what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, you would fast with them and break your fast with them. So you'd celebrate Eid with the people that you're with.
What happened the other day?
Yeah, you could break your fast, and if you didn't make at least 29 days, you'd make up a day. Yeah, because the month's going to be 29 or 30 days. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes. The inhaler? You have a health condition, then it may be that you aren't obliged to fast in the first place. Yeah. Yep. If you have a health condition that requires you, this would be considered an illness. If you have a health condition that requires you to constantly be doing something that would break your fast, then you wouldn't be obliged in the first place. Anybody else? Yes. You should follow the moon. Yeah. Because the moon is only, so look, like I said initially, what starts the month right here? Fast begins with the sighting of the moon. Okay? So, in the event that the moon is sighted anywhere, it's sighted in Malaysia first, sighted in Bangladesh first, sighted in Saudi, sighted in Syria, sighted wherever, then the person that's there, they got news that the moon was sighted, they would start fasting. If they followed the international sighting, they would fast with whatever place. You're not obliged to follow a ruler when it comes to your fast. Yeah, you don't need Ibn al-Hakim or Ibn al-Sultan for fasting. You don't need that. So you could fast based on the moon sighting. If they're just going to follow their local sighting, if that's what they're doing, and they're in one part of Syria and there's another part, and they're just going to follow that local area, they're following local moon sighting, then they would just go with the local moon sighting. If there's an intentional, we're not doing it, even though we know it is, we're not doing it because they're doing it, then this is maskhara. Yeah. Yeah, who else? Anybody else so we can wrap it up, call it a night? Any other questions? All right, everybody, thank you for your patience and your attentive listening. Jazakallah khair. We'll wrap it up with that. Wa sallallahu alaihi wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa akhiru da'wana. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.